So thank you very much, Mr. Ellison, for having us today. So the objective today is to introduce the audience to private aged care. It's a term that we as a media group have been using for 5 or 6 years because of the growth of LDK and Odyssey, and what we see as a media group travelling around the countryside, green shoots of an alternative model to the traditional retirement village sector. And if you've been to any of our leaders' summits or reading our publications, you will have noticed that we are promoting heavily that there is a definite shift amongst the consumers about what they are seeking in retirement villages, and at a time that the not-for-profits over the last 4 or 5 years have been segueing away from residential aged care development and saying that assisted living in a retirement village sector is a far more attractive business model because it's less regulated and the customer is paying for the accommodation component, and we can provide our home care services into it. And we as a media group have been saying that's fabulous, but in reality we think that that strategy is flawed. Now, who are we to be making these statements? Because we are a media group. I'd just like to explain that we have an editorial team of 5. So myself, rather grandiosely, I'm not a journalist, but we have 3 journalists, and we have my colleague James Wiltshire down the front. The 5 of us meet every morning, 5 days a week, from 8:30 to 9, religiously, to discuss what is happening in the sector. So that is 3 journalists are speaking to CEOs and C-suite executives every day, and politicians. And James and I get around and speak to quite a few people as well. And so we're constantly discussing who's doing what are the major movements, what's the thinking of these people, and so on. And that does give us this perhaps very special observation of the marketplace. Now, if we look at the retirement village sector, we say, will retirement villages transform into a private aged care? And we say it will for one very good reason, and that is that the customer will be the one that decides what the services are that we are offering as a sector. It will not be the operator. So operators at board levels can make all the decisions they like about what they're going to offer and services, but the reality is that the customer, to our experience, is going to decide. Now, to give you an idea of the strength of the customer, but also why we have this challenge, this is Laurie Suchich, who we interviewed. She is a resident in a retirement village, Australian Unity Retirement Village here in Sydney. When we interviewed her, until 1 month beforehand, she had not been out of her apartment for 3 years. And the operator did not know that she had been in her apartment for 3 years. And she was the sole carer for her husband. She's 91, her husband is 93. He has Parkinson's, and she has been looking after her husband. She hasn't left because she was fearful of a fall. They have been together sharing one $8 meal a day for the last 2 years. She said, I'm staying in this unit because it's safe, and she's typical of the customer that we're seeing more and more of, who is saying, you will not get me out of this apartment. I'm looking after my husband. I'm not going into residential aged care, even though I'm basically immobile. Now, we have a tidal wave of people like Laurie coming through the system, and everybody in this room is aware of it. Regis released their investor pack last week along with their annual results, and they had in it this graph of the people turning 85. Now, I know we've all seen these. We have put in this red line. So what it's saying is that in 2025, where the red line touches this bar here, it says, to our mind, that is the number of aged care beds we've got in Australia today. It's the number of hospital beds we've got in Australia today. It's the home care workforce we've got in Australia today. They're the people turning 85. We know that the average person going into home care is 82, average person going into residential care is 84. So look at the number of people who are turning 85 in the years ahead. And then if I add another line in there, which is what's happening in 2030, and you can see that this bar this one here, is saying that if we've got 600,000 people aged 85 now, we're going to have nearly 800,000 people aged 85 in just 5 years' time. And that means that we're going to have 200,000 more people, 85 plus, or 33% more than we have today. So if we have 33% more people, but all of our beds and services are full, what's going to happen to those people? Regis also pointed out the number of beds that are coming online. So you can see here, between FY21 and FY24, 6,500 beds have come online. The financial report for Australia in 2022-23 said we need 9,300 a year to satisfy that number of people. So you can see that there's a significant number of people coming through. We all know this, but nobody is facing up to what was going to happen to them. Now, if you've been to our Leaders Summit, you would have met Cyril, who is Cyril Toos, who's 86 in hospital in Victoria Harbour, which is the retirement mecca of South Australia, in October 2024, and he was on page 9 of The Australian. Now, as a media group, we take in all medias, and we've seen that every day, there is another news report with somebody in a home care crisis, and obviously we had the pressure taking place in Parliament just over the last few days on this. Now, for dear old Cyril, I'll just read this out to you. He said that in October, in January, so this is October, in January, Mr. Toos was approved for a level 4 home care package, the highest care available. But due to the backlog of demand, lack of funding and staffing shortfalls, no care was provided. This is in Victor Harbour, where huge population. Since then, his health has deteriorated so badly, Mr. Toos, who stands 183 centimetres or 6 foot, now weighs 42 kilos. So Mr. Toos has a bruise on his face, he's had a fall, he's 42 kilos, he's not eating, obviously, he's most probably not hydrating as well. And Mr. Toos told The Australian he had now made the decision to die and had started the euthanasia process through VAD. This is no life, there is no dignity. And in January, about January 12, he did take his life through VAD. So that's the situation we are facing across Australia. And if I go back to Laurie, she's looking at the same situation for she and her husband. So we, as GCM, have this hypothesis, and this is that retirement villages are the only solution. They're age-friendly, age-appropriate accommodation. And they have less regulation, so everybody is desirous of providing seniors accommodation under that less regulation. But the problem is, the residents are also understanding, or future residents are understanding this, and they're saying, we're going to grab this retirement village accommodation, we're going to get home care up to a high level, and then we're going to refuse to leave. And our hypothesis is that within 5 to 7 years, 100,000 of the 200,000 beds in retirement villages are going to be aged care beds. Just think about that. 100,000 of the 200,000 beds in retirement villages are going to be aged care beds. That means 50% of the retirement village sector is really going to be residential aged care. And what does that do to the business model? And that's what we're going to talk about with private aged care. In the 5 years that we've been discussing this, people who are at the coalface are coming to the same conclusion. So most people would know Grant Porteroy, senior partner of Stuart Brown. I asked him a question in our offices to Vio. What does he think the role of private aged care will be? And this is what he had to say.
It's going to be an important growth area, and it's going to change the way that the retirement sector now focuses. They'll be focusing on aged care delivery. They'll be focusing on building retirement villages that have got the building certification, we call it 9C, to allow for residential aged care or assisted living. And I think that this is going to be a significant change in the sector, and I think private aged care is the one that's going to drive it. I think obviously you want to have innovation, you want to have different models to meet it, so one size won't fit all. I think the DMF model is running out of steam, as it were, because it is getting paid at the end, and also sometimes you're not getting a DMF while the resident is already still there. I think that the upfront models is more of an attraction, but also provides more certainty to the resident coming in, that they know what they're getting and how much it's going to cost them on a recurrent basis. And I think that from a planning point of view, I think that provides much certainty for their financial position. You've got to remember that a large percentage of the boomers coming forward, there's still going to be those with, who don't have financial sustainability, but a large sector have now got inbuilt wealth through their home. I call it non-personal exertion wealth. And they have to be using that home as supplementing and part of the user pay system. And that means that if they sell the home to go into a retirement living, some of it will be an entry contribution, some of it will be the earnings of that, be it super or the home, to pay for their recurrent costs. I think courage is that aged care operators for a while have been dependent on policy. There's been a number of policy changes and a number of reforms, and they've been basically waiting for those reforms to come through, assessing how they come. Reform's always a slow progress. I think we're at a stage now where the operators almost have to take into their own hands and be innovative and have courage to try new lines of care service delivery, new lines of accommodation, look at service, retirement living and assisted living. So they've got to have courage to not only invest, but they've got courage to change their business model to adopt a much more expansive approach to care delivery.
So what Grant is saying is that courage, that's his new theme going forward, that operators are going to need courage to perhaps move away from the traditional business models, and as he mentioned there several times, rearranging your cash flow from not from a DMF at the end of the time that a resident is with you to up the front. And what Byron will be explaining with the LDK membership model, that allows that to take place. Now, the process for today is that I'm going to invite James Wiltshire to come up in a moment and just take a quick tour around the country to show that there are green shoots of new models appearing, particularly around care suites. Then I've got one or two other videos, and then we're going to have a conversation with Byron Cannon, the CEO of LDK. Then we're going to look at the tech side of how can villages be adapting tech to support this new cohort coming into villages, because it's a very different business model. And then what tech can be available in the home. And then we're going to have a panel session where you can ask all the people who have got this experience any questions you like. So I'd like to now ask James to come and take us through the countryside.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thanks for joining us all this morning in this great office. What we were going to do is do a quick run through of what we see as we get around the country. So I have the great pleasure of saying I actually walked into my first retirement village about 25 years ago. And a good friend of mine remembered it, but after I said this on Tuesday, he said, "You're also 25 kilos lighter when you walked into your first retirement village." So ageing gets us all at the end of the day. What we want to do is just have a quick look around the country and see what others are doing, because yes, we're talking about private aged care today, but I think there's been a real merge of the accommodation and care around the country. There's some really good models to be looked at, some really good developments to be looked at. But for those of you that have established village, I think there's a lot of takeaways that you can also take back to your established communities as well. The first that we wanted to highlight is some of the work that Retire Australia is doing. So they're very much, as a private operator, going all in on the care space. They've led the way with going back into assisted living. And the first one of their developments that they've really brought online is actually not too far on the Central Coast at Glengara, where they've built what they're calling a new version of assisted living model. But what they've done really well, for those of you who have been around and have seen assisted living, while they're smaller units compared to independent living, they're priced accordingly. It's always the cost of living that turns out to be the barrier. So if you've ever tried selling serviced apartments, you know that you're often selling a product that might cost $2,000 to $2,500 a month to live there to get your services and your care. And what Retire Australia has done is they've actually set up a care account that residents can enter into when they go into the village. That effectively becomes the care safety net that the resident can draw down on as the time comes for them to receive care and support services. So they're not just looking at the built form and the offering and where they sit by way of providing a purpose-built accommodation for someone with immediate care needs. They're also looking at how they can create safety nets in and around the financial questions that we often go through with the customer when it comes time to buying a care-based product. At their village up in Burleigh, the Verge, they've taken it one step further now with the introduction of care suites. So very similar to the care suites we see in New Zealand. And these are a small number of aged care homes, so 10 care suites they've got in this community. They are designed and built to 9C, so that means they can provide everything from ceiling hoists and the like to support the person as they age, all the way through to doing bariatric care through the system. They have 24-hour staffing there, and those 10 care suites were set up alongside a village of 150 ILUs. And the intent when they did this was to create a care pathway for their residents into the care suites. And there's no DMF on these care suites. So they're allowing a very easy financial model to transition across, and the resident having to fund their daily services and about $300 a day to live there. What's very interesting was this was designed to complement the independent living units. And what they tell us when we go and talk to Brett and Paul and the like, is that they're actually catering to the wider community that are stuck in their home needing care and support or even rehabilitation care, that are seeing this as a pathway for them to go down. So their vision was it would help their residents, and the actual fact is there are so many residents in the wider community waiting for aged care beds, so this has become a very good alternative for them to aged care in the Gold Coast community where they're located. If we look a little bit more closer to home up at Willoughby, you've got Highgrove's development there, and what they're doing is a similar, where they've got independent living alongside care suites or private aged care. Their development is a slightly different mix with 111 independent living units and 46 care suites. They're opening this month and they have 160 residents set to move in this month. So anyone who's opened a village or commissioned a village, moving in villages is a fair task. So to do 160 in a month is an amazing effort for the team there. And what they will tell you is the fact that they've matched the independent living with the care has really made their product shine in the Willoughby area, because people can move in knowing, yes, they can live independently, but through their high-growth care model, high care as they call it, they're able to get the care and support either in the care suites or in the independent living unit. So they're blending those models together very successfully. If we look a bit more widely and we go all the way to the west, I think this is probably one of the best developments I've walked through in my time in the sector. It's a stunning development over in Perth, Grant and Applecross. And it's the vision of that man there, John Frame, who was the former CFO of Bethany Group. And what John wanted to do was to create a housing product, a retirement village product, that had no DMF, but was self-sustaining, in that the residents funded everything, and the operator was really there as a service provider. They launched that development about 2 years ago, very successfully, where they've got the entire building is built to 9C. So think of that. This is a high-rise building built to 9C, so ageing in pace as possible in the unit. And the way that they've handed everything over to the residents with the service provider is through setting this up as a strata development, a strata scheme. I've managed strata schemes for 20 years, and I was really curious to see how this is working. They've put all the protections in place to protect the strata side of the development, and all the residents know what they're buying in for. And with no DMF, there's one resident there who spent $3 million on a unit, and when Chris and I met with him in November last year, he had it revalued at about $4.5 million in less than 6 months.
Wow.
That's purely based on the demand for the product. They built 10 care suites, similar to what Retire Australia did, and they're being operated by Roshana Care. So Roshana Care has gone in as the aged care provider for those 10 care suites. The demand for the care suites has been so strong that Roshana Care then spoke to the developer and has purchased the 10 one-bedroom units in that development so they can have 20 care suites salt and pepper throughout the development a little bit more widely. So they see that as being their model with great success, and the rumour is they'll be looking at doing another development shortly based on the success of this one. So an excellent model. If you get a chance to go over to Perth, I highly recommend you reach out to John and take a look. He's more than happy to show it around. So what are then some of the considerations we need to be thinking of when we look at more traditional builds, the broad acre builds? Some of you might have seen this slide before, but when you look at the traditional build, the broadacre build, where you have residents spread out, your great challenge is where are your staff located, isn't it? These beautiful new toys, medium density, everyone's contained in a building with everything accessible by the lift. So how do we take the learnings from these products and what are some of the considerations we need to have in our world today, given not every village is upfront? And when you look at it, we realise the staff are located in a central area and you could have 300, 400, 500 metres from that single building to the resident on the edge of the village. So what are some of the things we need to be talking about today if we accept that in 3 to 5 years' time, half of all our residents are going to be needing care and support? What are the things we need to be talking about at a strategic level and an executive level? And how do we solve for that problem? And what we see, what we talk about, is the way that we need to be solving for that problem is looking at technology solutions, which are going to help us with staffing, line of sight, and providing care and support for residents. But more importantly, for some of it's going to be, how do we partner with the right providers to deliver that care and support? We're not all home care providers, we're not all aged care providers. So it's going to be a combination of how well we use technology. We've got David Wally who can talk about that a little bit later, and how we use right care partnerships with right systems in place to support the governance of that. And Caroline Lee will share a little bit about that a little bit later this morning. And the reason we say we need to be getting our head around it is because as we travel around the country, we're talking to more than 650 village managers through our professional development program. The number one question we always get asked about is what is our duty of care to support residents as they age in our communities? That's the number one question we get asked from your staff day in, day out. And even when we're not in a room like this, we're getting emails coming through for us about what do we do, what do we do? And the landscape is changing when it comes to care and support. Is everyone familiar with the Victorian legislation? They introduced a new piece of legislation in May that had a new clause in it. I know you can't read that, but here's the takeaway. In Victoria, you can now not terminate a resident's contract in a retirement village for care needs if their care needs can be met by a home care package. Now think about that. If you have an ageing resident in a village in Victoria and you think that they can't live safely, but they can be getting a home care package, you now can't terminate for health reasons. When the home care packages finally come in under the new system, home care packages will go all the way through to palliation, won't they? Consider that. Our world is changing, which is why what we talk about in this room today with you all is the DMF model has a place alongside private aged care, but you can play with levers, and we'll talk about that a little bit more with Byron. The horizontal model is inefficient, which is why our challenge is how do we look at technology and how do we look at smart partnerships to be able to deliver services to residents to keep them in their homes safely. But more importantly, the D-Day decision for everyone in this room is, are we delivering care or are we facilitating care? And hopefully over the course of the morning, it'll help you solidify how you have those conversations at your own boardroom. So I'm going to hand over to Chris, who will continue the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, James. So one aspect that James hasn't mentioned, which I'd like to draw everybody's attention to, we haven't mentioned the word dementia. And so with more than 50% of residents in the private aged care models that you're going to see having dementia, it is a major factor. And I see in the audience we have the people from Visionaries, Old Group Homes Australia here, and if you want to get a true understanding of how you can bring dementia care into your village, I suggest you speak to Tamara and her friends in the audience today. I'm just going to go through a couple of a video with Cam Ansell, a brief one, and he's going to show you this slide, which was his penultimate slide at the Leaders Summit. And what this is a slide that Ansell Strategic says is going to be the growth areas in the retirement and aged care sectors over the next 30 years. And he's going to say that this green section is assisted living over these. And so I'm just like to, showing you this because when you watch the video, keep this in mind. So Ansell Strategic have done an analysis of where they see the growth coming from, and they provided this chart. And between 2025 and 2030, this is what he says is assisted living. This is what he says is private aged care. But between 25 and 30, you'll see that, again, they also see that 200,000 people are going into assisted living or private aged care over the next 5 years. So this is Cam Ansell.
And they give way to the baby boomer generation, which are the architects of consumer choice, and they are not grateful. And neither are we later, the Generation X either. As the architects of consumer choice, they want to exercise their ability to be able to live in environments which is as much as they have grown up in the future. And they're less likely to be drawn to be going into villages of older people. And so the likelihood of me wanting to go into as a pull factor to hang out with a whole bunch of old people when I'm pretending not to be old myself is less. And so it's more likely to give way to push factors. And those push factors are health. And I know that this offends some people within the retirement living sector, but I think that there is still growth within the retirement living sector, but I do not think that those that provide only accommodation options are going to go in line with the growth in the number of older people coming through the system. In fact, from about 2033, our modelling indicates that it's more likely that the numbers are likely to decrease, and the ability to be able to get DMF entry contributions for people is going to lessen, and this is what we think it looks like. This maps out using all of those different metrics where we think the volume of demand will be moving forward. And I think because we no longer will have to rely so heavily on government or government funding, that our ability to respond to that demand is going to be much, much better. Across the top line, you have residential aged care. As I said, it does increase, but it doesn't get to 400,000 in 10 years. It increases relatively marginally. Most of the nursing homes I walk into every year in this country are not fit for people with high levels of functional dependence. Most of our investment in residential aged care won't be in new ones. It will be on rebuilding the ones that we've got and making them better for people at high acuity. The one below that one is private aged care. Those people that will fund their way out of residential aged care services when otherwise they really would have needed it. The one below that then, that massive area of growth in green there, is assisted living, being made up of care homes specifically made for older people and retirement villages that deliver homes. And you can see at the bottom there, independent living, those villages that do nothing but provide accommodation solutions, decrease in size and increase in the volume of people that are in there because they have limited choice. That projection indicates that the biggest area of growth and the biggest area of service delivery is really operating on the fringes at the moment. And some of the stuff that you're going to hear about today, groups from Black Odyssey and LDK are going to be talking, they have been innovating and leading the charge. They'll become mainstream in the future. And for us to be able to think about where we want to be in the future is most exciting. The last 10 years, the last year since the session in March last year, I've done more strategy work with organisations, including a number of you here today, than I'd done in the 30 years before that. We've been really constrained, as Tom said earlier, in our ability to be able to innovate, and we continue to be while we're hamstrung by all of the requirements, and we're addicted to government funding to be able to deliver services. But as that starts to change and we're paying more for stuff ourselves, I think that naturally gives way. Our biggest challenge is not trying to get across all of the compliance. It's trying to let go of it. It's trying to think what our consumers in the future would want in that future and how we can deliver against it.
So you can see that Cam is marching to the same tune as we, and for those of you who are not familiar with Cam, Ansell Strategic Group is perhaps the major advisor at board levels across the country for particularly not-for-profits, along with Stuart Brown. But as I mentioned before, if we look at this graph, 200,000 people are going to be in a retirement village in one form or another, according to Ansell Strategic, within 5 years. And that's really sobering, isn't it? I'd like to now bring to life what is the model of private aged care and how fast are the consumers seeking it. So I'm just going to give you a quick edit of the presentation done by Aaron Lavelle, the CEO of Odyssey. The first section is he's just explaining their growth in 5 years. So if in this room thinking, yeah, but it's how can we possibly grow? I can do one at a time. This private group on the Gold Coast, first property on the ground, stage one opening 5 years ago. Now they've got 840 in development and $400 million from just one private developer. This is what Aaron has to say.
In terms of vision, on day one when we opened our doors 5 years ago, we really had a vision of owning the Gold Coast when it came to quality care in that over 85 market. We monitor it every quarter. We have quite a complex three-way financial model that attaches to our strategic plan. So I'll just run you through reasonably quickly the sites that we have. So we have 4 sites at different stages of development and planning. When we're completed, it'll be circa 840, maybe 850 homes. We have got a foot on 2 more sites, but certainly no rush to do those. So with Robina, that was our first one. We opened that in August 2020. So just a couple of images to give you a feel for it. We have really nice dining facilities. It's a big part of the formula. We presently sit about 120, and with the 4th tower coming on, we're closing part of our alfresco area to get another 60. We were envisaging 2 shifts, but the residents said, no, it's our home. We want to come down when we want to give residents what they want. So the last one here for Robina is our dementia. We call it memory lane, as I said before. So Chevron Island is our first foray into a high-rise. When you look at the design, it's very much a statement piece. Probably the thing of note here is the top 3 floors we haven't done before. They're really high-end. So there's 3 bedrooms, they're about 226 metres each, 3 mini penthouses, and 3 maxi penthouses. So they're 512 metres with rooftop terrace on. So just to give you a bit of idea on some of the renders, this is the foyer, so very much like a 5-star hotel, salon, coffee shop. This is the dining facility. So I said that's a big part of what we do. It's part of the secret sauce, I guess, in the formula. So Hope Island is our 3rd one. So just looking at the renders here, I heard those giggles. So it's 2 16-storey towers. So this one will have 233 apartments, 200 what we call Odyssey homes, 23 with the dementia, and 10 on the top 2 floors for the penthouses. So our last one, which we only settled 3 and a bit weeks ago, is at Burleigh Waters. So this one here is a really nice piece of land. I don't have any renders yet because it's brand new.
Okay, so you can see from a standing start, they've got 840 homes in their pipeline, $400 million. Phil Usher, the guy who started Odyssey, was able to get the funding behind him, and it's actually Sun Super. No, they've changed their name, haven't they? Sun Super to, can't remember. So Superannuation Fund is funding all of this development for Odyssey. Now, what is the business model? Again, Aaron is just going to talk through the very basic components of the business model, and it's worth hearing before we speak to Byron Kevin.
There's no doubt care is the glue that keeps them together and what differentiates us from your traditional retirement village. So the comparison to aged care often comes up. The easiest way to explain it is that subject to the capacity and willingness to pay of our residents, we can deliver similar levels of care to an aged care facility. We have a high tide mark on aggressive behaviours. Now, high tide mark would be below a traditional rack that's better suited. And that's really about the enjoyment of the wider facility. And that is probably the greatest area that I come across. Those who do get care from us, about half are funded via home care packages, half are private. In terms of acuity, looking at the current home care packages, 47% are level 4, 31% are level 3. We've only got 1 resident at the moment on level 1. With our staff, we do care at cost. So we regularly compare that to the larger not-for-profits. In all cases, we do that at a cheaper rate. We actually make our money on the development side and through the exit fee structure. If you look at the people who are on the home care packages, 45% of them have the dementia supplement. So we have quite a high proportion of our residents with the onset of dementia. The last key piece of the care is that we have an on-site doctor. We have allied as well, being podiatrists and physios on-site as well.
So you can hear from that quick explanation of the business model. They do care at cost, they do meals at cost. It is all the profit, all of the cash that pays for that private aged care model comes out of property, and the increased value, the capital growth out of demand by the customers for to get access to living in an Odyssey home. And Aaron explained to us in Brisbane that the medium point, you call it, midpoint for the age of people in Odyssey is 1.9 months. 1.9 years, apologies. So it really is far shorter than you would expect. Traditionally, it would be 4 years, wouldn't it, Byron?
We're in the higher care levels, probably 3.
3 years in the higher care level. So it's a challenging business model from a cost control, which means that your systems have to be really good, and with the volume of staff that you have. So at Robina, they have 200 residents, they have 75 staff. They have 7 nurses, registered nurses, permanently on staff. So to give a break from our voices and videos, I'm going to ask James if he could have a conversation with our guest speaker, Byron Cannon, CEO of LDK, and I'm suggesting we might sit up here, and I'll pass it over to you.
Just make sure we're on. Excellent, thank you. Hello, thank you for joining us. Thank you. I thought we'd start with a simple one. This isn't prompted, by the way, so Byron has no idea what he's getting into, which was part of the Ask Me Anything. It's a Sunday afternoon. How do you explain to friends and family around the barbecue LDK in your model?
Firstly, if we could move that slide, because it's every time I look over my shoulder, it's not pleasant. We just had a leadership. I've just come off 3 days of our leadership retreat, and we did my intro, 3-minute intro, completely in AI. I did not say one word or record one word. I showed the data for Aldi last night, and I'd much rather look at an AI position of myself. I say that we are a retirement village. In fact, what I say is I work in seniors living. We're a retirement village provider. However, we provide all the care and services that you need through the end of life throughout one of the promise, with very simple and transparent financials. That's about it in one sentence.
And that sounds like private aged care, doesn't it? It's a retirement village model where you provide all the care and support. So explain for everyone in the audience, what are your business levers when you're looking at a project? So you've got 2 projects. You've got Greenway Views, which has been up and running now for 5 years, is it?
Yep, January 2020.
Yep, 5
6
years.
weeks before COVID.
And you've got Amberfield, which you're launching as we speak.
Yep.
And that's another...
Amberfield, Greenway's 327 apartments. Amberfield at stage 1 opened in October last year, 52 villas plus communals. Stage 2 opens, we handed over at the end of this month, 127 apartments. That includes 20 within the dementia sort of college setting and about 35 care homes, so 1-bedroom apartments. And then stage 3 started construction. It'll be 193 apartments, and we're calling them sky villas, which are big, large, sort of luxurious properties with a huge amount of communals. That's about $200 million build. That'll be April 27. We've got the landings here in Sydney, and we just secured a site in Brisbane.
So that's official now. We can talk about Brisbane.
I'll talk about Brisbane. I just need some permission to tell you exactly where it is.
So coming back to it, so that's quite a lot you've gotten on in the last few years, which is really great to see, and I think it's a testament to the success of your model. You heard Aaron talk about, they don't make money off care, they make money off the property component. So for the benefit of everyone in the room, do you just want to talk through the levers of the business from a financial perspective and capital?
Like Aaron, we tried to simplify a fairly complex structure of money that comes in. So we simplify our cash flow drivers. They come from our development profits. They come from our membership model. So we try and get 60%. At the moment, we're sitting around sort of like 58% upfront for our village membership model. And then we get our money from capital gain. So our operating cash flow model is sensitive to that capital gain. And capital gain we view as our reward. It's our performance incentive if we do a good job. The demand for our product will continue to drive, which will drive that capital growth. And then the membership model, we allocate a certain percentage of effectively what's been accrued per year within that village membership, and then subsidise that value proposition. So we very clearly articulate what that value proposition is, so we can invest that allocation of money into the value prop, have then very disciplined sort of budgetary measures, I suppose, to make sure the teams stay within those operating budgets, and that makes it sustainable.
So let's just, the membership model might be new to some people in the room. So how is the membership model different from that traditional DMF model that everyone is probably used to having in their own businesses through the moment?
Yep, so if you're coming to live with us, we'll explain to you there are three components as to what you'll spend. One, property, and that's as simple as money in, money out. Give me $1 million, you'll get $1 million when you leave, within 6 months of leaving, or earlier, by law if someone else moves in. Ask the family, ask the resident, do you understand that? They go, yep, tick. That's very, very simple. Next component is a village membership model, and it is a fixed amount per apartment for life. So it's not a percentage that is tacked to the value of your home. So, and the reason for that, the membership model delivers benefits that are all the same for everyone in the village. So it doesn't make sense that someone that pays double the amount for their home is paying double the amount of a DMF or membership model, because you get the same benefits. And then within that, we articulate what those benefits are. The most powerful benefit of our business, and we heard from a resident panel at our leadership retreat yesterday, is the one move promise. And that is, our promise to you is that if you live with us, we will provide all the care and services that you need through your end of life. Dementia care, palliative care, 24/7 nursing, all the things that you've heard about. And you can downsize without costs. So we are a licensed loan model as opposed to a sort of traditional lease loan model, where if you need to access or move because of usually memory or mobility, we just amend your license. So your legals and your financials flow. They follow you all the way through. So if you need to go from your 3-bedroom home down to a care suite or into one of the cottages, everything just follows you, and then when you leave, you get the money at the end of the day.
And you do have an option with the membership fee where you can again pay that on the back end, so you're able to then tailor that to the financial circumstances of the customer as well. So customer driven, so you can have a very strong lens there.
Customer driven, but again, the model is sensitive to getting that up front. You need to keep your people infrastructure and your services ahead of the wave. So you need that capital investment up front. So we sell to up front, but we also know that some people can't afford up front. So when you talk about levers, we review pricing at all aspects every 6 months, and some of those levers that we can pull is the membership fee. So you might push the deferred up a bit higher, or the upfront up a bit higher, and a bit lower, to try and encourage that to sort of sit within those guidelines that we can operate in.
So that specifically is a balancing act, because I'm going to be interested on what, maybe using empathy or new development, what percentage of customer is taking the upfront membership model? You know, the studies to talk about deferred. How are you changing the norms with the membership model to enable your business to happen?
As we sit here today, it's sitting around 53% up front. And we were quite curious about that, because Greenway, the landings is sitting at around 87% up front. Established village, huge amount of demand and very little supply. The landings is a green zone. And one of the things, if you do start to provide care, acknowledge and model that your turnover will significantly reduce. Yeah. So our turnover last year, we've been there for 6 years, was about 40% lower than what you would expect for a mature retirement village, because of the care and services that are being provided. That's a lesson for us and for everyone as well. What was really curious is at stage 1 at Enfield, much younger cohort, larger village style, not much care. They're the people that are buying for the future. Much lower percentage of upfronts. It's not sitting around 42-43%. Stage 2, it's nudging the 60% right now as we sit. Older cohort who need more care and want more certainty in their life. So that human dynamic we didn't appreciate.
So you mentioned the landings, and I think this comes back to the conversation around today, is that we sit in the room, we hear about new developments, new products. You can choose your own destiny really from day one as the operator. Talk us through taking your model and retrofitting it into a well-established village such as the Landings, and which has a bit of history that people know in the room. So, you've got 20, 30 years behind you that you're coming in as a new operator with a new idea. Just talk everyone through that journey.
Imagine the most litigated village in, I think, New South Wales history. 20 bits of litigation between the operator and the village residents in the 8 years before we took over. We walk in the door, all guns blazing. We are a brand new model, brand new business. I've never been in the industry before. You're an existing retirement village. We're going to give you care and services. And what we want you to do is to give us all your capital gain from now on. And we got torched.
We got torched. Where are you going today?
That led to a little bit of introspection and reflection. That was before we even took over. We got
They're very change averse sometimes, as residents, are they?
Absolutely beautiful. We love every single one of them. That led to a very long trust development process and really caused us to communicate very heavily. And these are the lessons if you are going to convert. Engage with your residents, engage with your residents committee, understand who your ambassadors are going to be, because they're the ones that are going to be telling everyone what to do. We ended up not having to sell as much. What we had to do was just do what we said that we were going to do, day after day after day after day. Create expectations, manage expectations, and then deliver. We engaged with them on the legal contracts. We got the residents committee to sign off on the legal contracts before we even submitted them. We got them to sign off on all our service offerings, make sure they were comfortable with it. And then we, that took us about 4 or 5 months to actually get to that legal point. And then we gave them a 100-day good work period. So it ended up about probably 10 months of time that they had to pull out at any point.
And for the benefit of those who, how did the contract change for the resident?
So they were a traditional lease arrangement. We had a deed of variation to the lease that altered the capital gain. So if you operate in a model where you keep all the capital gain, it's a much, much easier task for you. We were asking them to give us a lot of money. So a deed of variation for the lease, and then we had a personal services agreement by definition, which was the village membership agreement. And that said, in exchange for you giving us capital gain, you'll get the benefits of our membership.
And we had this chat before, so I know, this one, you'll know this one was coming, but from the operator's perspective, that's a lot of work, going in, changing a well-established model to a private aged care model, your model. For those of you thinking, this is in the too hard basket, let's talk dollars and cents here. What sort of value creation came through the other side of this for LDK?
We bought that village in February 2019. As we sit here today, it has grown by about 140% in value. So we doubled the bank valuation within about 4 years.
Yep.
From traditional, and the simple way of looking at that is, as we know, they value on a discounted cash flow basis. When you bring forward a lot of those, when you bring forward a lot of your cash flows through upfront memberships, it has an ongoing impact on the valuation. And then what we have found with our model, and PwC, when they were highly regarded as consultants, did a detailed analysis on our model, and the value proposition uplifts our retails by about 35%. So exactly the same village next door to each other, our village will sell for about 35% more, and then that ongoing capital gain, that helps.
So when you talk about the business levers, that's right there is very compelling. You're getting the upside and the value, you're getting the cash up front, and I was speaking to a regarded valuer in the sector, and actually said that the cash up front model is a bit of the darling from a value perspective, because it really does paint a good picture for the future. I think I'm conscious we're getting close to time, and we had a bit of a panel at the end, but the last one I want to touch on again, just for context for everyone in the room, is the number of bodies that you have on the ground in one of your communities. Can you just articulate for everyone just the sheer volume of people moving around one of your communities?
Yeah, well, residents and staff, so the Landings Curiously, you mentioned people receiving care. So the landings, we have about 35% is where it's sort of stable of residents receiving care and services. Just under 300 residents, about 290 residents, about 95 staff. So that's the landings. Greenway, about 65% of residents receiving care and services. We have 400 odd residents there, about 220 staff. And that's a mixture of about a third full-time salary, a third permanent part-time, a third casual workforce to sort of flow through there. So it's got a heavy people infrastructure. You need scale. In our model, you need scale anyway. With the way we operate, the villages, village managers, your mini CEO, they have all that. They're much flatter sort of structure.
So I'm going to leave it there because we've got to get on. We're going to get to the panel. I'm sure there's plenty to unpack from that when we get to the panel for the people in the room. So please thank Byron for his time. We'll have him back next year.
So as Byron and prior to Byron, Aaron pointed out, it's not a simple property business like the traditional retirement village has been, where you might have 120 residents and 3 staff. You've got 200 residents and you've got 70 staff, 70 plus. And because you're operating many things at cost, you have to have great control of that. And you're now dealing with people physically and emotionally. So it requires a very sound infrastructure behind the scenes to operate such things. So for our next speaker, Caroline Lee, who is the founder and principal of LDK, we asked Caroline to bring to life what sort of software is available for people who are not familiar with the software for care support. And also, we're very keen to showcase Caroline because we regard LDK as the quiet achievers of the aged care sector, which she'll explain to you that aged care in Singapore is dominated by LDK. Aged care support in New Zealand is dominated by LDK. The emergence of retirement villages in the UK is dominated by LDK. They are the quiet achievers. And she's going to show a slide that Hammond Care did a massive review when Mike Baird came in as the CEO and employed John Sutherland, who's a superstar in IT, to totally review Hammond Care's operations. And Hammond Care, under John, also 2 years ago brought LDK into the operation. So it's a great Australian story, and I'd like to ask Caroline if she could come and give us an introduction to LDK.
And I'll be the tech in the room who mucks up the tech. So, the other way. You've already seen half of my presentation. We have been around since 1902. Thank you, Chris, and thank you for that introduction. I appreciate being called the Quiet Achiever. Obviously, we've been around in Australia a long time and in these other countries variously. So Singapore came about because we were asked by the ministry, so then we did become the product of the nation. New Zealand, we embarked on them. They didn't have a choice. And the UK as well, back in 2018. Our model and what we have learnt from that journey over those different jurisdictions has helped each of the different countries that we're in. And that's in terms of security, service types, and expanding the program and the software to support all different areas. So in Singapore, we support home nursing, residential care, and they're still called nursing homes, and senior care centres. In New Zealand, we're in retirement living and then rest homes and private hospitals. In Australia, we are in residential care, home and community care, and a range of different services that our clients have put us in and used us for. And the UK, domiciliary services, residential care, and a whole range of other little things that we are not familiar with here in Australia. So what we had to do in order to do that and to provide the services to this many clients was really look at, and the awards that we receive, I've got one for 2024, I've got to put it there in 25, but we had to look at with all of the different service types that we had, for example, in New Zealand, the villages, what in the future would they need as well? And that's how we have grown our product over that time. New Zealand, interestingly, only 2 of the services, retirement living services that use us, don't have residential aged care as part of their model. And the rest home or private hospital or services that they utilise and what they use our program for is quite predominantly care as well as operations. So our product base is also in Australia, as I mentioned, and we do have, and thanks to John, we do have Bupa and Calvary and Hammond Care, Wesley Mission Queensland, we have Queensland Government, South Australia Government, Victoria Government. So we have from 10 beds to 16,000 beds installations. And that means too that we've learned with all of these experiences with all these different clients how to make sure we have an enterprise system, how to make sure that we have a broad spectrum of support, and that includes configuration, settings capability, and a whole range of other things. So why could an organisation use our product for all their services? Because of the configurability, because of the flexibility of the product. So you can have a completely different look if you're using the system in the retirement village versus what you're using in the senior care centre or the rest home or the nursing home residential care. So it's really important that whatever software model that you have, that it can take you through that journey with that resident or client from admission right to separation, whatever that might be. And Hammond Care, I did ask John, and he said, yes, please tell them my quote, and you can join him on LinkedIn. So we were very proud when this decision was made, as we are proud to be the supplier for all of our clients. But the main reasons they said they chose or selected LDK was because of our reliability, our configurability, and our sector experience. And that broad experience. Since 1992, we were a software company in 97, but from 92, the program and the product that we sold to the sector were consulting services and accreditation and support, and then a lot of sanctions and nurse advisor services. From 97, when I got sick of writing hand care plans and assessments, I used my physics background colleagues who I had studied with in applied physics to write a software system. And that's literally what we've built on over all of that time. So I am a nerd, John knows that, so he has respectfully said, the successful digitisation of our care and medication management for residential aged care with our partners at LDK, Rolling International, who are the consulting group that they used, matches effectively the Cerner Corporation's EMR solution used across hospitals. So for us, that was a fantastic accolade, obviously. And the point being there too, medication management. We are the only and the first product that has eNRMC e-prescribing medication capability. We are the only software system that is submitting 6 monthly prescriptions to the National Prescription Delivery Service at this moment. So yes, we'll have vendors catching up soon, but we can still say that. So, we don't just look at, and this is the suite of products that we have, care, we look at operations. Our products include operations, a Platinum 6 care and lifestyle, community, and what is required for that model. Medication management, yes, but an app for staff on the ground or in a person's home, an app for the families, for the residents, for the loved ones, for them to communicate with you, your photos, your documents, your news and your newsletters, but also care information and preferences. And then in residential care, the monthly care statement that you want to submit is automatically available in the app, for example, and a range of other features that that app has. TelTouch, we just purchased the TelTouch company. Now that's because with surveying becoming much more important and knowing the lived experience of your residents, your families, your staff, being so embedded within the new standards as well, we needed, and frankly, shortcut and not spend 2-3 years building a product like this. We needed to buy the product, and that's what we did. So now our team are utilising that for visitor management, staff surveying, resident surveying, as well as lived experience monitoring. So, the products, if you're going to use private aged care, HighCall, why did they select us and what products are they using? Well, they are using our operations, our finance, they're using our care and lifestyle product. HighCall, are a beautiful organisation here in Sydney who have used that private aged care model in their construction, in their mission and in their delivery. And it's an interesting model that if you want to, meet with Patrick and the team, I'm sure they'll share their experience as well. HighCall is a new build, it's a new world, and the private aged care sector is very much now, and we can see part of our inquiries, part of those who are interested in looking at our software. So all of these types of products, and so if you're looking at private aged care and what type of software you need, well, in the sectors that we are in, the home and community care, the senior care centres, retirement living, that effectively for us is what private aged care, all of those components of our system are utilised and needed for the private aged care. We're in residential care, and as I mentioned, some of our clients have used us, and we are being used by Resolution Queensland, for example, for young care. We've got disability services across Perth and WA using us. We have palliative care programs and companies using us, as well as active ageing. And that's the Singapore model. That's where what they've done is 5 million people ageing very quickly, requiring attention and not residential care. What they have the most strongest area that they support is senior care centres and active ageing centres to reduce people going into residential care. And what happens is daughter and son go home or go to work, and then at night time the person returns back home to be with them. Now that's not our model in Australia. One simple has to do that, they don't have the space. However, we have an opportunity with private aged care to do something really quite different and quite wonderful. And we are still the best in the world. I keep telling everyone that. And to achieve this, we need to have interfaces. We have generic APIs. We have to have, and we do have 60 different interfaces with different products, because purchasing or licensing best of breed that you want is important for us, for you to achieve, because we don't want you to be upset with us. We don't want you to not like what we have. We want you to choose what you need for your service management, and we'll interface with it. So EV, who you're going to hear about next, the wonderful technology and hardware. We've been working with EV for a number of years in a Singapore home, where it was laundry tags, door access, weights and vital signs monitoring, a whole range of other things in the hardware space that is important in different areas. So the interfaces, government systems, medication systems, finance, CRMs, care and lifestyle, other ones, benchmarking, risk management, catering, quality life apps, learning management, rostering, payroll, patient information systems, the list goes on. And that is also something, if you're going to purchase software, licensed software, make sure it has that capability, because then you have choice. And that's what's really important. Otherwise, you're not going to get the buy-in of your staff. Change management is too difficult. So we understand that. You need the data to flow, as you would be telling us as well. You need the data to flow. It has to be congruent. You don't want anything different in one system to another and cause risk and cause issues. So we're very cognizant of that, and that's why we do make it that you have an all-in-one suite, data congruent through our model of software. And that means our apps, real-time help. And we have now 4 apps with the Staff on the Ground app or in-home app, the Resident Client Family Journey app and Communication app, TelTouch, the surveying app, and Careful, the last one that we've brought into the suite. And that is a health professional chat, professional communication app, which is basically WhatsApp on steroids, with email and text and phone call not being required anymore, because the app and the GP who got us into this 2 years ago, he goes to the gym, he's 70, he has 80 residents in one facility, and he all runs it from his app, and he's in there 1 day a week. And he does say to us, I was just at the gym the other day and I got this. I said, Henry, what are you doing at the gym all this time? Really, at that time of night, at that time of day? He said, I've got a life. And so, quite seriously, the staff know if they call or if they send something, normally that gets missed. But if they actually have it in the app, Henry's got the task calendar, he's got the action list, he's communicating with the speech pathologist who's linked into the app by the nursing staff, with the dietitian, with the physio, whoever it is as part of that particular client's journey is linked by the staff to the app for that client. So there's a holistic health professional group. And you can also send something to a family from that as well if you need to. This is what you need from software, I would suggest. This is what will help, and certainly in that private aged care space, these are the things to consider. If you're going to have care as a model and support as part of your delivery of services, client administration, resident notes, forms, care plans, messages between staff, all of this has to be congruent. All of this you should have in one system that will assist you to make sure and ensure that you don't have that incongruity of information and those silos of information that cause risk. Task allocations, KPI dashboards, business intelligence, all of these are the sorts of things that we've had to build over the years with the different nodes that we have. Operationally, looking at your staff and your supply management, your maintenance, your inventory, your document library, these are the icons on our operations front page. Incidents, hazards, risks, quality and continuous improvement, linked to your continuous improvement plan, linked to your meetings manager, linked, and education credentialing. All of these aspects, as well as obviously finance reports, you can get in various different other systems. I've put it all into one because we could see that that journey needed to have, the journey of software for a client needed to have a broad base of functionality, and that's why we've built it over these years. So Platinum 6, you do want to know about the cat or the dog, the pet. You do want to have that and the plan of that. You do want to know about the caravan. You do want to know, so it's not just about care either. It is using the system to be useful to you. So you know what's in your village, you know who's in your village, you know what you need to potentially support. So care lifestyle is more than just in a village sense or in a private aged care sense, more than just the care of the person, because as Chris was saying, you've got the emotional needs, the psychological needs also to deal with and to support. The mobile app, as I mentioned, point of care, voice, manual data entry, services, task calendars, and all sorts of charting, as well as your GPS if you've got to have somebody go home or go to a person's home. So all of that type of functionality and the My Care Plan app, as I mentioned, the sharing of the documents, the photos, the newsletters, etc., as well as their goals, their preferences, and their care plan that you have worked through together. And one thing to mention before I finish about our TelTouch app that we've just purchased is the 80 languages, which I'm so proud of. We have a wonderful, diverse, multicultural society here in Australia, and we are now looking at expanding this into Singapore as well as our New Zealand branches. But Australia, 80 languages, including Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander languages, has been something that TelTouch spent many years developing and creating for the sector, and we're getting that beautiful benefit off. So hopefully, if you're interested in talking to us, you'll come and see me after or contact one of the sites that we have. Thank you, Chris.
So as I previously mentioned, Caroline is the quiet achiever of the sector. As you can see, I found that all exhausting, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot to go through, but you can see that if you are thinking of going into private aged care, to be able to do what Byron and Aaron have done, a lot of the infrastructure is there and available to you. It isn't not as daunting. And I'd just now like to ask David Worley, as the CEO and founder of Evie, to just show what is available in room, because as James was showing earlier, if you've got a horizontal village and you've got management located 500 metres from somebody who is like Laurie was at the very beginning of this presentation, you have a responsibility of staying in touch with them. So David, could you show us what's available?
Thanks, Chris. And thanks, Chris, for, I guess, spearheading this private aged care sort of masterclass, and I guess the wider ambition for us. We're a strong believer in it as part of the solution to the problems. And a lot of our investment in the technology that we've been doing has been in this private aged care masterclass, having been led by our clients. That EV itself, we're a care monitoring technologies business. So in the way that Carolyn's platform is the care planning, finance, rostering, scheduling, all the software you need to run your operations side. We build the hardware and infrastructure that goes into the village, and the cloud-based and application services then for monitoring what's going on with the residents. So it's that situational awareness in the village of what's going on with the resident, the carers, the service delivery, etc. I wanted to start with this quote, and Paul Brown won't mind me attributing it to him. When we first met with Paul back in 2019, he said, "Care systems are a main issue we struggle to nail. We are not just a residential aged care provider, nor just a home care operator, nor just a retirement village. There is no right system available to us." And that was, I heard that echoed the Leadership Summit earlier this year by Byron and by Aaron. And they are, and we know that LDK are going through very much the same journey, if you like. And it still very much remains, like the model, a work in progress. So I want to sort of highlight that it's been very much a private care model, a model of care that's challenging not just the built forms and the financial models, but also the systems. Our journey started in this space really. To give you some context here, we worked with Avail on the Newstead development back in 2015 to 2018. And it was then the leading model for integrated retirement community. And James was there at the time, and we spent thousands of hours talking to residents and staff and carers through design sprint processes to come up with the technologies that would facilitate this Avail Newstead flagship development. And it was and remains a beautiful community. Still very much though to the old models of independent living on the top floors, assisted living 2 floors below, RAC 2 floors below that. Very siloed workflows, very siloed care models, and as a result, very siloed systems and data. So the PERS system, medical alarms upstairs, nurse call downstairs, the two didn't talk to each other. In fact, it was so segregated that if you were living in an apartment upstairs and wanted to, and your partner had to go into the residential aged care facility to visit them, you would have to go down the lift to the ground floor, cross the reception, and go up a separate lift to get into the residential aged care facility. So that was then the best models, but still really very, very siloed, right? After that, we started working with LDK, a completely different care model of one move promise, manifesting in any level of care anywhere. I'll talk to that a bit more. But it really did require us to re-architect the solution from the ground up. One system, we really bought into this idea that, one system that was flexible enough to deliver any level of care, and in different apartments for different people, but also as the care needs changed, we needed to be able to adapt the technologies that were being used. It demanded a much more modern sort of architecture than traditional, PERS or nurse systems. So what does the right system look like? And it's hard to give you a really good view of this in 5 minutes, but it must feel like home. So there's no point in having traditional nurse call points and enunciators or thinking like that. That's not what they want. It must feel like a home. It must support any level of care. And by that I mean in one room, and we will have an independent living person who's got really no interest in seeing anything that looks like care in their apartment. They'll want a wearable, they'll want voice-activated services, etc. Right next door, we'll be delivering the highest levels of care to someone. They'll need bed, sleep patterns monitored, they'll need fall detection, they'll need motion movement, as well as all the regular alerting systems. So that's what I mean by any level of care, anywhere, super flexible, and that demands a flexible and modular system. A lot of wireless technologies. When you deal with wireless technologies, you've still got to deliver ultra reliability, so there's a lot of complexity in doing that. The clinically useful data and insights, so we'll spend another minute on that, but there's no point in having all of this technology and delivering 10 times more alarms and alerts to the carers. You would just kill them with fatigue on those alerts. And so a lot of the work goes into suppressing triggers and only delivering what is critical data or a critical alert or insight. And lastly, of course, standards compliant. There's a world of those in this space. 4607, 3811, 27,000 little cybersecurity standards, and it's only getting more. So this is how we would articulate what the right system looks like. And just from a dashboard point of view, the sort of data that you're after is data that can give you the KPIs you need to run your business on, where all the alerts responded to in 5 minutes. Was anything that lasted more than 15 minutes escalated to the RMs, etc. At a glance, can I see that happen? What's the data that I need for my clinical team? Are they getting up? Are they able to assess their interventions using the data? Are they able to have discussions with the family using the data? It's much easier to justify an increase in a paid care service if you can prove using the data that mum is increasingly pressing the alert button and is increasingly going to to toileting, for example, which is an indicator of UTIs, just as an example. So the use of this data enables you to be a deliverer of care, right? And that's to James's point earlier. You have a choice, particularly if you're moving from RV or you're contemplating taking an RV model into a high care model to either facilitate by partnering, which is a legitimate strategy, or delivering it yourself and putting your arms around it. And that, I guess part of what we're trying to demonstrate to the industry is that the data's there to help you deliver. If you want to deliver, the systems are getting there. They're getting there to the point where you have the confidence that you're getting the data you need to be able to run these. And AI is only going to make it more so. A couple of quick examples of using that data, because that was part of what Chris asked us to do. Data to maintain or to support clinical risk management. It's just one example. It's mock data, but it reflects real life data. This is indicative of an individual with dementia in the community. And you can see the loads of the alerts and alarms and triggers and sensors that are being applied to someone trying to manage them in that environment. Sleep, bed exits, alerts, door triggers, lots of, we'll have it from a resident who's opening and closing the doors hundreds of times, but never leaving, right? Because that's this is a pattern over 12 months. And you can see after the first 6 months, a steady decline in those alertings and then a stabilisation. This is the same data pattern, but on a 1 month basis each day. This is the early stage of it. This is chaos, right? This is care chaos. This is very, very frequent alerting, very, very frequent visitations from care staff. And this, one resident can drive 25% of those ad hoc alert events in a community as big as 200 or 300 people. So understanding where that is, how you're going to manage that. This is indicative of starting to see interventions, clinical interventions, for example, diversional therapies, where the person's taken out of the room for 3 or 4 hours in an afternoon. And you can see a much steadier sleep pattern now emerging in this is what they call a digital phenotype. It's what a person looks like in the digital world. And you can see those sleep patterns being much more stable. You get to the later stages of the disease, and unfortunately, you see a much more, looks like a stable pattern, but it's really just the progression of the disease. So the point being is the data is now available to you, the system's now available to you, the technology is really there where you can rely on it for that delivery of the resident care, provide you with indicators of agitation. You can assess your interventions. You can communicate clearly to the family. It's being used for the GP interventions to assist with medication management. Data is also great for the preventative interventions. These are again mock data, but patterns of simply motion in the bathroom, so toileting patterns. This is over a 14-day period. It's very peaky. The peaks are between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. Right? And these patterns are common across many across the wide cohort, if you like. And you can apply algorithms to that, and you can start looking for instances where someone's patterns change, and then you're doing proactive interventions against those changes. We know from straight studies in the US that this is a really good and low-cost way of looking for interventions, particularly with your independent living folk who aren't getting in your community. You'll have a segment that are low care, they're not getting regular visitations every day from the care team, you need to know that they're safe. And lastly, when you overlay our data from our platform, data from the care platform in terms of care delivery events, data from real-time location systems, we can actually start to get a bit of a 360-degree view of the resident. That's really for us sort of the holy grail of what we're heading here is if we can truly understand the combination of those things, it's really powerful. Chris did ask us to talk 2 minutes to the future of technology. It really is so much about AI at the moment, and there's lots of different ways of approaching it. We just want to get started. I've got a roadmap for 2 to 3 years. We are increasingly being asked by operators, where is AI in your platform? How's it being used? What's your guardrails? What's your governance, etc., particularly by the larger, more sophisticated operators. So it is very much at our doorstep as an industry, but still very early stage. This is McKinsey's data over 7 years of AI adoption. And their point is a couple of things. Firstly, all of the adoption in the last 18 months, which has been heroic adoption, has been driven by the generative AI, the Claudes, the ChatGPTs, the Geminis, the Groks. Most of the investment in AI is still by the large businesses, still by the big business, and the return on investment at the moment is very poor. So, according to McKinsey, less than 10% of the large investors in AI are generating more than 10% of an improvement in their revenue or a 10% reduction in their costs. That's a really bad, it's a really bad investment. But it's still early days. They do say through the research that, and you'll find this if you survey your staff, millennials in your are already adopting it. They're already using it. If you don't think you've got AI being used in your organisation today, it will be. The folk who are probably struggling with it most are the folk who are being forced to use it, the sales folk and software developers. They're the ones who've got the least positive view on AI at the moment, partly because they're being the first users of any technology, don't get the best experience, but also because of fear for their jobs. So there's a real dynamic that's happening here. It's embrace it would be our observation. We ran a little accelerator with a few CEOs of care clients and other organisations that we're involved with to get started on it. It's one way to do it. I'd encourage you to find those kind of engagements to get started with it. It was really good. It was a great way for us to get from zero to, the zero to about 10-20%. And I think even just doing that exercise, we were probably propelling ourselves into the top sort of 5 to 10% for users. And Byron participated in this. It was a really good exercise. And at the end of it, we spent a day on, it was over 4 weeks. We spent a day on how you would use AI to make a change and deliver a use case in your business today. And it was across customer experience, operational efficiency, staff experience, and business strategy. And this is just a few of the cards that were put up in response to that. And one of them that was then worked on in the case of aged care was a streamlined care planning process. Recognising that onboarding someone is a arduous, painful, survey-driven, lots of data, but the way we collect that data today is very manual and mandralic. Death by survey was described as. If we could just bring together all the data that already exists on that person who's being onboarded, if we could bring the residents' GP records, the care assessments that have already been done, the families' views and all this on the resident, bring all of that together at first, and then ask much more pointed questions as part of the onboarding process. It can be faster and more efficient, and that was just one example of how you might use it to reduce your costs, onboard faster, save money, better experience. And it was mocked up in a day. That didn't connect to anything, couldn't have onboarded with it, but it really gave the management then a vision piece that they could take back to their organisation and share with their organisation. So really encourage you to embrace it. Our last observation here is we are seeing this shift from where we were when we were talking about this back in 1920. It's an interesting model, private aged care, but not for us. It's too hard, we'll outsource it, etc. More to increasingly accepting that this is what the customer wants. We are going to deliver the care ourselves. I recognise that no one wants to go into institutional care, to really the ideal outcome from a resident's perspective, which is, I want to live and die in my own home where I belong. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Just keeping an eye on the town. So we'd now like to ask our visionaries if they could join us on the podium. And if you've got any questions you'd like for the visionaries, we welcome them to be asked. And we have some mics in the audience that we can deliver.
Whilst you're doing that, Chris, the AI transformation that's coming to us, you have to start. That was the biggest thing that we got. We had a 2-day leadership retreat. The anxiety in the room when they started, we did about 5 or 6 hours on AI over the 2 days. At the end of it, we ran a challenge and split it to teams to prepare use cases. And what the teams learned within about 36 hours to come up with use cases for AI was incredible. The talent over the businesses and the savings we're going to achieve are unbelievable. So just do it. Would be my advice.
Okay, well, if I could perhaps ask the first question to get the panel going. And we have Robin on the podium representing Mentor Ellison. Everything that we've been discussing relates to care in retirement villages, and yet many people say retirement villages are a property play, in that it's a good business for people to live independently and you make your money out of a property transaction. Robin, what are the challenges for a traditional village operator to bring private aged care into an existing village? What challenges do they face legally, property, zoning, etc.?
Well, how long have you got, Chris? That's sort of like, that could be a day seminar, I think. But I guess a quick snapshot would be, just on the legal front, I think one of the very significant changes is that currently if you're the independent operator, you're operating under the retirement villages legislation in each state, which is itself pretty significant compliance obligations. If you go in a sort of model that Byron, obviously, for example, like into, I'm assuming that you'll be registered providers. So it immediately means that you're going to be dealing with the aged care regime and have to, if you're not already a registered provider, you will need to, in order to operate and take the, use the care packages or supported homes that will be from 1 November, and become a care manager under those packages, you will have to sign up under the Aged Care Act regime. So there's obviously some very significant obligations arise out of that. It's all manageable, lots of people are doing it, but you will be faced with grappling with both the RV legislation and the aged care and need to be compliant. So there'll be a very significant increase in your compliance obligations and the systems and processes that you will need to have in place in order to make sure that you are doing all of those things. And there are also some pretty significant statutory duties that arise under the Aged Care Act, don't exist under the RV Act. And those duties go right up to the board level in terms of making sure that the governance systems are correct and that the registered providers in fact comply with all of the conditions of this registration. And in fact, all the employees and also associated providers, if you are also using or subcontracting some of your care provision to a third-party provider, which is possible, but you can't escape liability for the actions of those associated providers. So that's number one point. It's just a fact of life. Unfortunately, the laws are out there to protect residents, and there's just a few more you're going to be taking on board. So that's probably number one. Number two would be there are some significant things to think about in terms of existing villages needing to convert their built form in a way that might help you, take on the provision of aged care to the extent that companies like that LDK have So you'll, if you've got a traditional RV, you know, we talked about the fact that it's a villa style. It's not the best environment in which to deliver higher standards of care when a resident does get to that point where they need more intense care, particularly to take them through things like palliative care. So you will not necessarily therefore maybe need to look at redevelopment of your village, adding facilities, maybe adding a care apartments so that people can transition on that sort of one promise move that Byron's talked about, say their villa into a more sort of intense care environment when they age a little further and need more attention. It's all possible contractually very easily. I mean, we can design a contract, as Byron has, that a resident signs once when they enter, and it takes them right through that continuum right to the end, without having to recontract or sell a unit or go to all that trouble. So that's all very doable. But the thing that will be necessary is if you need to go and do redevelopment, there are obviously restrictions under the Retirement Villages Act in every state around redeveloping your village. And I guess the bottom line is in New South Wales, for example, you cannot, there are provisions in that act that require you to get the consent of residents or at least a special resolution to redevelop a village or to alter a facility or service, which will be inevitable in the redevelopment. So you need the resident community on board, and Byron's proved already that that's also doable. May take a lot of negotiation and doing things like varying contracts and so forth to get the resident community on board. But it's just one of the processes you'll have to go through if you're going to convert rather than build a greenfield site. There's also the Class 9C issue you mentioned, Chris, which is that when you reach a certain point, you're going to cross that threshold where the activities you're conducting in the village require a 9C classification of buildings, which you may not already have in any of your retirement villages at the moment. Certainly, that can be compartmentalised to with new parts of the village complying with 9C, and the old parts that don't necessarily need to be 9C still remaining Class 1, Class 2. But that is something that will need to be considered just from a built form point of view. And then planning's the other one. I mean, there may be, again, a lot of the planning approvals for existing retirement villages basically are approving retirement, the uses of retirement living. Again, we're crossing the line potentially here to become aged care, not because you're building an aged care facility, but because you're conducting activities that fall into the realm of being aged care from a planning point of view. So planning approvals may be, or modified planning approvals may be required in order to make that conversion. Depending on how far you intend to go into the provision of care, I mean, there's obviously a number of different models in the market. Not everyone has to potentially go as deeply into the care provision as LDK has, who are taking people on through the palliative care. So yeah, they're just some of the quick snapshot of some of the legal issues.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? On the front?
Thank you. Thank you for everyone's presentation. It's fantastic. I'm Lorraine Poulos. My question is to you, Byron. Around your villages and the access to care, what percentage would be using home care package funding? Number one. Number two, are you a provider of that services? And what are your plans in the future as those contribution rates, particularly for self-funded retirees, will increase the more, the higher volume they use? So just some thoughts around the planning to, I guess, take advantage of those changes and, any insights for other operators.
Yeah, so we are an approved provider for home care. So we obviously have very strict care governance frameworks and all compliance things that we need to do to comply with that. Percentage of home care recipients is probably, out of all the care that we provide, home care package funding is probably around 40%-ish. We also DVA for DVA Gold Card, and then some people pay privately as well, and a number of people will top up. One of the challenges with our model, and we're trialling some solutions for that is at the moment, we bang on really hard about the consumer wants certainty and transparency, and we deliver and And then you get to the point where they go, well, how much is my care going to cost? And you can only answer that honestly and say, well, I don't know. Because I don't know what your care needs are tomorrow, 5 years. So we're actually trialling a capped care lifetime. So a lifetime cap for what you'll pay privately for the top up of your care. So we've got a huge amount of data from residents that we've looked after, a huge amount of data from obviously nursing homes and other areas. So we're trialling that at stage 1 at Anfield, what we're calling the LDK Plus. So as part of the membership, you increase the membership price a little bit, but we'll make a promise that you won't pay any more than X dollars of care. X dollars towards your care, provided we're your home care provider, and there's not obviously T's and C's. We are doing it organically at both Greenway and the landings as well, not a more bespoke basis. So it hurts us when people leave, and residents' families usually are driving that because of cost. So we then offer a tailored capped care. It'll be a combination of a daily cap of care and then a lifetime contribution towards that. So we're getting some good feedback on that. You need to be very careful you don't blow your business up. So we feel that we've got a bit of a good spot at that at the moment, but we'll continue to assess that as well.
Do you find they choose to have other providers coming in, or do you encourage them to have you as the provider?
We encourage them to make their own decision. We're obviously legally obligated to do that, and we have probably 2 or 3 of the landings have external care. At Greenway, I think 1, and that's totally fine. But when they can see that we deliver in shorter increments of time, we have 24/7 care on site. You don't have to pay for travel for your carer. They start to understand they get a lot better bang for their buck.
Same care.
Same carer. Yeah, consistency of carer. It's all of those things. Once they see that, we don't really have to have that sort of conversion discussion with them to use us.
Another question in the back. Thank you, James.
Whilst that question's being asked, I just wanted to comment. Last week we hosted 2 IC from the Aged Care Quality Commission and 2 ICs from the Department of Health, and they had an entourage with them. They were all very, very interested in how retirement villages are going to deliver care. So there is a very open mind at all levels to get a deeper understanding of how it can be done. So it's out there. They're very interested to see how it's going to work. The shared care program is going to help with that.
Hi, Dan Marisi from the Falls Estate. It's probably a question for all of the panel members. How do you, with this continuum of care that we're talking about, have been talking about for years and now it's been implemented, what are your experiences on when a couple has one partner that obviously goes downhill or inevitably will go downhill faster than the other and needs to be moved into a higher level of care? How do you practically handle that from a technology perspective, but also an operator and a legal perspective?
Yeah, I've probably got a bit more experience. So as part of your clinical case management, we are assessing every resident at least every quarter. So even if you don't receive a second of care from us, we are communicating with our residents. As residents' care needs starts to increase, we'll be starting that moving discussion 6-9 months ahead of that. What we'll find from a human behavioural perspective is that the carer wants to care for their partner. They then start to experience carer fatigue, and they get to a point where they're exhausted and they're sad. So we try and get ahead of that discussion at least 6 months ahead. So you're talking about it, getting a level of acceptance about it, and then almost curating that conversation and as it progresses. So it's not a, oh my God, I'm gassed, I'm fatigued, something has happened now. So you're sort of allowing that discussion with family, with other treating practitioners to start to encourage that discussion, because we need to care. And it's beautiful. One of the residents that we had in the panel yesterday relayed her experience. She said the carers are actually caring about me just as much as they were caring about my husband who needed the care. And then part of the one we've promised, if they need to downsize, it's not an extra ingoing contribution that the partner pays. They will pay the weekly fee and they'll pay for their care, but they don't have to double up on their ingoing contribution if the couple's split. Because they want to stay together for as long as possible, and the numbers don't lie, the actual time period that you have them split is not a huge amount of time because they want to care for their partner for as long as possible. So economically, it doesn't hurt that much, but it increases your value proposition because it gives them that certainty.
Well, I guess one of the major problems we see now is residents in independent living retirement needing to be separated when their partner has to go to an aged care facility. I guess one of the massive benefits of having private care in RV is that they will be still living in the same community, which will solve that pretty enormous social problem that we're seeing a lot of.
The only thing I'd add to this from a technology point of view, we can sort of support whatever care needs following, but different levels of acuity in the same room is very hard to monitor. So, sleep patterns, you've got trying to monitor some motion patterns and so forth, but it's doable. It's just, obviously the is confusing.
And from a software perspective and care and assessment, for them it's encouraging to see that you have thought about all these different areas of their life. So when they see the assessment process, when they see the care plan at the end or what you're thinking of supporting them with, they then know that, okay, you have thought about my sleep, my mobility, but also about my social engagement and my ability to continue with my community. And that's what the software is designed to also capture.
Just a question on technology providing. We talk a lot about duty of care, and then there's the care governance realms that you sort of go into when you become a provider yourself. Caroline and David, how do your technologies help with the conversations to get to that boardroom level around navigating duties of care, navigating care governance requirements and the like, and simplify to give a better line of sight and comfort that this is a strategic direction which isn't a bridge too far, as may have been the case in the past?
Thanks. Business intelligence views are really important. So being able to demonstrate incidents, infections, wounds, even at that clinical level in a captured way, hospital admissions, lead events, things of that nature, business intelligence is really important. Having that reporting capability and like with the surveys, being able to, and when we put TelTouch into one site, for example, they had within a whole year probably 20 different feedbacks. They got 1,000 feedbacks within a month, positive and negative, once we implemented the TelTouch system. So it's also using the technology, the reporting, and then using the technology to gather as much information as possible to enable you to get that. That's what's really important. So from a care perspective, there's all sorts of areas that the boards will be able to use to make some further decisions.
James just mentioned duty of care, Robin, and Byron. We discuss this often. People operating retirement villages, duty of care really isn't in their vocabulary. Once you get into this area of providing support, duty of care is a really significant thing, even though you might think that you're operating under the Retirement Village Act, because directly or indirectly, you're saying we will support you, and you have that ailing person. Can you explain, Robin, duty of care for the audience?
Yes. So, duty of care is in its simplest form, it's a common law concept. Which basically says that depending on the relationship between parties, they may be under an obligation to do or not do things to avoid harm to someone from foreseeable risk. So the common law recognises a number of categories where there's clearly an established duty of care, things like doctor, patient, teacher, student, employer, employee are obvious ones. The courts have not gone so far as to categorise retirement living operators and residents as an absolute category of duty of care. However, there's no doubt that there will be a duty of care by even an ordinary standard independent living operator to their residents, given the nature of the relationship, the proximity of them, and what promises are made to them around what the operator will be doing while they live in the village. However, that duty of care in an independent living unit environment is probably relatively limited. It certainly wouldn't extend to you needing to provide care to someone who gets to the point where they need it if you've been very clear about the fact that you are not a care provider. However, what we have seen in the last years in the sector is a growing trend for every independent living operator to either facilitate some sort of care in the village by bringing in some external providers, or taking on certain sort of well-being obligations into their community. So there has been somewhat of a blurring of this duty of care concept about how far does an operator's duty go to protect their residents from harm in relation to certain events. So the things that are already a bit blurred. The reality will be that, and the other thing that's blurred by effectively is a lot of representations that are made at the point of sale, in marketing material, and even in contracts about what operators will do. And we do often see some marketing material that goes a little bit further than perhaps the operator intends, which does muddy the water further. And it does start to engage then issues around misrepresentation under consumer law. And also the RB Acts all have provisions in them around providing misinformation to residents, which ultimately can end up in contracts being rescinded. So there are a number of avenues residents have if they believe that they've been represented to about a level of care that they don't ultimately receive, and there's some harm or damage resulting. But moving into the private care sector, you're going to engage them with the Aged Care Act, and the Aged Care Act has some very stringent statutory duties of care that registered providers are going to be very scrutinised over. So there's effectively, the common law concept of duty of care is enshrined in the Aged Care Act in a very significant way. So registered providers have a duty to to do everything reasonably practical to avoid any of the recipients' health, safety being put in a compromised position by their actions and the way the business is organised and run, and the way their staff operate. And as I've said, that duty can't be escaped. There is also there's also a responsible person duty, which extends that duty right up to board level. Anybody in the executive leadership team, so they've all got obligations to make sure that the registered provider business are doing all the right things to avoid that sort of harm to their recipients. And also that duty can't be delegated to third-party providers. So they're all significant duties. So there's no doubt that moving into the private care arena and taking on much more serious, foreseeable risks with your community of residents, and also not just more foreseeable risks, but risks that will lead to more serious harm given someone in a very aged or frail condition. There's no doubt that the duty of care is going to be significantly enhanced, but hey, it's a business risk that just needs to be managed. And the sorts of things that manager, the technologies you're talking about, help you manage that risk really well, and having all the right governance in place in your business to achieve that. One of the things I do think about, I'm not sure whether you separate, one of the things I think is probably advantageous is that the operator of the RV may be a different entity from the provider of the private care for a number of reasons. I mean, it petitions risk to some extent, but it also avoids a little bit of inconsistencies, some awkward little ways in which the RV. Sorry, but I don't think there's words.
Oh, okay. Yes, use that.
Sorry. It also will avoid. It will also avoid the way the RBA sits with uncomfortably with some of the Aged Care Act requirements, which is a little bit technical to talk about today, but we just want to make sure that care provision services don't get caught into the current charges under the RB Act, because that has significant problems on a budgeting point of view. But yes, that's so duty of care is something that is very important, and operators need to be very mindful of. But again, not all that scary if it's managed well.
Thank you very much. We're actually coming up to 10 o'clock. There are 2 points Byron, sorry.
No, I was just going to add to that. If you, very quickly, it all comes down to your governance. So if you are thinking about doing it, have a look at your risk management framework, get your board online, they'll review the risk appetite statement. They need to own the decision, and then that will filter down through all of your frameworks.
Thank you. There are just 2 points I'd like to make as we round up. I think we can see that private aged care is becoming a thing. Our emphasis is on the fact that the customer is going to demand it, and they're going to demonstrate that demand by entering a retirement village, and they and their family are going to refuse for that person to leave. Then you have the duty of care situation with the DCM Institute. We have over 600 village managers. At every professional development day, the village managers are saying, I have a resident that I know should be in aged care. Their daughter I'm on speed dial to, the daughter thinks I'm responsible for that care, and what am I doing? There is nowhere locally that they can go. And home care packages, they've been waiting 12, 18 months for. So so that duty of care is still going to occur because it's going to be expected with the village manager that you're on location, you've got oversight of mum and dad. That's the first point. Second point is, Robin and I were talking last week about what does this mean in terms of home care services. And Robin said, well, independent operators will just get home care providers in. And then he said, hang on a sec, how many home care providers have we got? Have we got enough to service all the retirement villages? And will they want to give their services to the retirement village operator if you can now get in fee for service? So increasingly, home care providers will be saying, you've only got so much, right? 7 hours a week for a level 4 home package under the old system. You need 8 hours and I can charge you for it. So I prefer to keep control of my customer base rather than having it in a retirement village because my workforce is limited. So don't assume that an independent home care provider will be wanting to work with you and provide the services in your village. That's the first point. The second point, out of AI, through our hypothesis and discussions saying, well, getting a workforce to work in home care is nigh impossible. The view is that within the next 3 years, let's say, there's a whole swathe of knowledge workers, school leavers, university leavers, and the 50-year-olds who will now be retrenched or not able to get a job, and they'll be keen to live in and work in their local area. So we have a property up in the Northern Beaches. You can't find a home care provider to save yourself, but we know that within 3 years, there's a whole swathe of people who will be unemployed and keen to work in home care on the Northern Beaches. That's a positive note to end this discussion. Thank you very much. Can we please show our appreciation for the